Coming up on the Paper Talk today, we're looking at what next for Manchester United. Who is going to be the temporary manager and who is going to be the permanent manager? And could we see some Old Trafford legends returning to the club? And I'm not just talking about Darren Fletcher. Let's check it out. Jay here of Stretford, Paddock. This is the Paper Talk. As you can see, I'm in the studio, but we're not live. We've had a few gremlins in the machine, so we've had to do a pre-recorded news this morning, but that shouldn't stop you lot getting involved in the chat and the comments, talking about all the latest Manchester United news, as you would expect. It's all talking about the departure of Ruben Amorim and what is going to be happening next at Old Trafford. We know Darren Fletcher is in for the Burnley game, but what happens after that? Is it going to be Darren Fletcher to the end of the season? Is it going to be someone else coming in? There's some names being bandied about. We've heard Ole Gunnar Solksjaer could be making a return to Old Trafford. Also, Oliver Glasner, Enzo Maresca. These are names being linked with a permanent manager's job. So we'll be getting into all that. So make sure you let me know what you think about all the latest stories in the comments. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. And let's start off with just where we're up to this morning in terms of the severance fee that's been revealed for Ruben Amorim. So Ruben Amorim obviously left Manchester United. He's gone and he's going to get a £10 million payoff. So because he'd been here, I think, a certain amount of time, he's still entitled to the rest of his contract being bought out. So there's a story in the Mail that said it's basically going to cost 10 million quid. Says Ruben Amorim walks away with a £10 million payoff on Monday when he was sacked as Manchester United's head coach after 14 months in charge. Amorim was summoned to the club's Carrington training base and dismissed by Chief Executive Omar Barada and Director of Football Jason Wilcox after clashing with United's hierarchy. Over the last week, United's under-18s coach Darren Fletcher has been installed as caretaker manager for Wednesday night's trip to Burnley. We're going to be hearing from Darren Fletcher later on today for the press conference. It says as well in the article, United bought out his contract at Sporting in October 2024 for 8.3 million and paid another 900,000 so he could start work early. He signed a 6.5 million a year deal until June 2027, meaning his payoff for the remainder of his contract is around 10.05 million. United will also have to compensate the 5-man backroom team who followed him from Portugal. I mean, it is a hefty payout, and Manchester United do this every other year, don't we? I think, other than the manager, other than, I think, is it Ralph Rangnick, who was only here till the end of the season, I think we've ended up paying off everyone, haven't we? David Moyes was on a 6-year deal, I think. Jose Mourinho signed a new deal, I think, about, what was it, a few months before he got sacked, maybe about 6 months before he got sacked. Ole signed a new deal, I think, 10 months before he got sacked, or 11 months before he got sacked. More on Ole Gunnar Solksjaer in a minute. It's what United do. We end up paying off managers, and look, it's not ideal, and it is annoying that you paid out all that money, but if you want to get rid of him and you think it can't work anymore, then if that's your only option, that's your only option. That's what Manchester United have had to do. They've had to pay out something they probably need to look at, but, I mean, what's the other option? Keep him because you want to save some money. That'd be a lot worse, I think, to be honest with you. If you don't believe in this manager anymore, you don't think it can work anymore, then I think you do need to part company, even if it ends up costing you 10 million. It's just indicative of some of the nonsense we've seen, or say nonsense, some of the sort of bad planning maybe you've seen from Ineos. We paid, was it a few million quid to get Dan Ashworth and ended up paying him compensation as well. You paid extra money to get Ruben Amorim early, even though Ruben Amorim didn't actually want to come early. I think he wanted to come at the end of the season, and then you end up paying money to get him early, and then paying a payoff for him and compensation for him and his backroom staff. It doesn't feel like an ownership or leadership that know what they're doing, does it? Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm being harsh. Give me your opinions. Let's talk about Darren Fletcher then. Here's what we know. He's going to be in charge for at least the Burnley game. There's the article here in the BBC, and I've seen this clip doing the rounds about when he was interviewed a little while ago, and he spoke. This is when he was managing or coaching the under-18s. They'd just beaten Brighton 4-0, and he was giving an interview, and he said, the fast attacks, it's proper United. I've been showing them, the players, old clips of Rooney, Ronaldo, Ji-Sung Park, counter-attack goals, Giggs and Kanchelskis, trying to show a little bit of that Manchester United DNA, and that came out today, which is fantastic. If teams want to come and have a go at us, we've got the ability to play around them, and if they want to leave a high line against the players we've got in the final third, we can be devastating. So people looking at that going, can he bring that energy, that United DNA, that sort of style, those tactics to the Manchester United first team? We'll have to wait and see, because it's a weird one with Darren Fletcher, isn't it? Because we don't know who he's going to have available. Now, it was a bit of a makeshift team for the Leeds game, wasn't it, under Ruben Amorim, because there was no Bruno Fernandes, there was no Mason Mount, no Brian Mbeumo, who's obviously at the AFCON, no Ahmad, who's also at the AFCON, no Nuzair Mazraoui, who's also at the AFCON, no Harry Maguire, no Matthijs de Ligt, no Kobbie Mainoo. You had all these players injured, plus a load of players away with the AFCON. So, is Darren Fletcher going to be able to come in and instantly implement his style in a makeshift team? Maybe, maybe not. We'll have to wait and see who's available. But if he's only got the players that were available on Sunday, he might struggle to play a similar style of football that sort of like some Andrei Kanchelskis and Ryan Giggs running down the wing, or Wayne Rooney, Ji-Sung Park and Cristiano Ronaldo counter-attacking against teams. You might have to cut your cloth accordingly. So we'll have to wait and see what happens on that front. But Darren Fletcher coming in, I think it makes sense, that move. I thought it was going to happen. It's not anything insightful. I think we've spoken about in the past on the channel that if Ruben Amorim was to go, you expect Darren Fletcher or someone from the club to come up, be promoted from within. Darren Fletcher is the obvious candidate. Been around the coaching staff for a long time. Obviously coached the under-21s, the academy teams. Knows the club, was at the club for a long time as a player, and he's a club legend. So it all makes sense. And I don't often say that about Manchester United. One of the leading candidates to take over permanently is Ole Glasner. Now, there's been a little bit of pushback from some people saying Ole Glasner plays three at the back. We spoke about this yesterday on the podcast. However, people point out he does play four at the back. He plays three at the back when he feels like he needs to. He can play four at the back. Three at the back has become the sort of almost like the kryptonite to Manchester United fans. It's like, no, we don't want three at the back. This is going to be a disaster. If Ole Glasner comes in, that means we're going to stick with three at the back. It doesn't. He can play four at the back, and he might well do that if he came in and saw the players he's got at his disposal. You could have a decent back four there. We don't know if he is going to come in and when he gets here, what he's going to do. But there's a lot of opinions being shared. The Evening News have done one of their opinion pieces. And they're talking about not just him coming in, Ole Glasner, but also him having his dream team, basically. And how maybe he could go for Adam Wharton. Adam Wharton's been linked with Manchester United. Glasner could go back to his old club if he leaves Crystal Palace to come to United and try and get Adam Wharton. I think a lot of fans would be happy to see Adam Wharton in a United shirt. Do we still need him even if we don't stick with the same system that Ruben Amorim had? Yeah, we still need midfielders. You've got Casemiro, I think, turns 34 soon. You've got Bruno Fernandes, who's 31, I think, and his future is a little bit unsure what's going to happen with Bruno Fernandes. Kobbie Mainoo is going to stay by the looks of it now. There was talk of him maybe going, but I think he's going to stay because the manager who didn't fancy him is no longer here. He's one who can obviously play pretty much in a... He struggles to play in a Ruben Amorim system, but he could play in a Ruben Amorim system if he had a different manager. If Ole Gunnar stuck to that system, I don't think he will. I think he'll change the system. He might go back to a 4-3-3, and if that happens, then you could see Kobbie Mainoo playing that, definitely, because that's where he shone as a United player. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. So people sort of looking at if Glasner comes in, I think he's one of the favourites. What will it look like? Who's he going to bring in? Is he going to sort of try and play the Crystal Palace way? Is he going to try and bring in midfielders? Will the club buy midfielders for him? I expect us to bring in midfielders in the summer, regardless of who the manager is, whether it's Ole Glasner or anyone else. Let's talk about some other names that have been bandied about as potentially coming back to United. Peter Hall, who's been on the channel a few times, he writes for the iPaper. He says Carrick is in... Michael Carrick, obviously, is interested in taking the United role on a temporary basis. No contact from the club as yet. He tweeted that, I think, this morning. Want to keep an eye on Michael Carrick. Did a very good job, didn't he, as caretaker? Was it interim or caretaker? I forget. He was managed for about 4 games, didn't he, before Ralph Rangnick took over, and he did very well. In fact, that was probably the highlight of the season when Michael Carrick managed those few games, or those 4 games. It pretty much went downhill before and after that, to be brutally honest. Ole Gunnar Solksjaer is another name being mentioned. Romano tweeted an hour and a half ago. Well, by the time you're watching this, it's probably a little bit later, but I think it's a couple of hours ago. Manchester United, aware of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer being keen on return, even on a 6-month contract. Solskjaer would love to be back and help Man United as caretaker manager. United start internal process today to assess short-term options, then new permanent manager from June. Now, Laurie Whitwell has mentioned this in an article he's done. There's an article in The Athletic. I think Laurie and Matt Critchley have written a big article looking at what went on at Manchester United. And we're going to be getting into that later on. We're going to get Mark Critchley on the channel. I think we're going to speak to Laurie later on as well this week, but we're going to speak to Mark Critchley today and get his thoughts on what's gone on and a little bit background to that article. I don't want to get too much into it because we're going to discuss it later, but there's a lot of interesting points in this article about the tensions between Amorim and Wilcox. Also, the fact that Sir Jim Ratcliffe wanted Amorim to switch from his preferred back three to a back four, as did Jason Wilcox. Now, that is a little bit troubling to me. Not that Jim Ratcliffe wanted a back four. I want a back four. It's this idea that maybe Sir Jim Ratcliffe has some influence on tactics, because even if though his opinion might be the same as mine in terms of how United should play, I don't think it's a great look having the owner or the part owner influencing tactics. Because what if Sir Jim Ratcliffe has an idea that you don't agree with, that we all think is an idiotic idea, and he's influenced the manager? Would we be on board with it then? Jim Ratcliffe might be a lot of things, but he ain't a football manager. And I think if you've got a football manager, you have to let him, or a head coach, let him pick the tactics, not the owner. Now, I understand Jason Wilcox is director of football. He can have an opinion and maybe even some input into that. But the owner having an opinion and influencing the manager, I think is a bad look, personally. That's a rocky road to go down. Let me know what you think. Even if you agree with what he's thinking in terms of the tactics, him having a say in it would be problematic, to say the least. There's other bits and pieces in this article as well. Apparently there's a bit of a bust-up between Lisandro Martinez and the head coach. We'll get into all that later on. But yeah, some very interesting points on just why it all went wrong for Ruben Amorim, towards the end anyway, and what the future holds now for Manchester United. There's never a dull moment, is there, being a Manchester United fan? Make sure you check out the merchandise. There's a link in the description for our merch. Also, as well, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and check out all the other videos we've got. We've had the reaction to Ruben Amorim sacking from me, from Joe, from Stephen Howson. You can get odds on Stephen Howson to be the next Manchester United manager. Obviously, you know, you're not going to bet on him to be the United manager, really, are you? Unless you've just got more money than sense, but it's quite funny. Plus, we'll be hearing from Joe Smith and Adam McCullough for a bit of Uncensored later on today as well. So make sure you're hitting like, share and subscribe. I've been Jay Motty. This has been a bit of a later news today. Thanks for watching.